Hey, I wanted to show you a mix for the new Eclectotron song, Fearless. Let's take a look. So here's my session. I mixed this song in Reaper. We recorded it in a combination of Reaper, Pro Tools, and Logic, basically whatever was in the room at the time. Your DAW doesn't matter. That's the first and most important thing you need to know if you're trying to learn how to mix watching this. Let's learn a little bit, but first let's listen to a couple pieces of the song so you know what we're working with. So the intro goes from that, a guitar lead, and then from that into a verse.
I feel the energy rise up from the streets. Behind us in the distance, there's a door from the beat. I know.
And then that builds up into this stop in the chorus. And we repeat that and get to this outro, which has a sort of a guitar lead and a So that's the song in a nutshell. Let's take a look at each part, and starting with just explaining the folders and the organization of my session. At the top, I've got sends. I always have a sends folder. I like grouping them all in a folder because I don't want to look at my sends. I just want to route to them. In this session, I only have a long and short reverb send. Sometimes I'll do stuff like parallel distortion, parallel compression. I know in this session I have some parallel distortion in a different folder with the toms in the drum kit, but in this case I just have the two reverb sends. Then I've got a sound design folder. I like sound design folders just to separate some of the stuff that's not what we recorded and support the song in whatever ways I think it needs it. In this case, I've got some little build-ups and transitions. So that right there. We've got basically a reversed cymbal and a little sub. And I also have this thing that's labeled guitar transient. This is kind of weird. It's kind of a hear me out. I didn't feel like the guitar was percussive enough in the way we recorded it. So I added a sample and I went through and actually just manually placed the root note of each chord in the whole song. And that's kind of a crazy thing to do, but it's just like a fix it in the mix to a problem that I created for myself by recording a guitar a certain way. So you shouldn't need to do that, but sometimes you do what you got to do. Next up, we've got the drums folder. And in the drums folder, I also have a bass guitar. Sometimes I'll include a bass guitar in the drum folder and just bus process everything together, and sometimes I won't. In this song, it felt good. I generally just throw it in to see if I like the way it feels, putting the bass through my drums bus processing. And I almost always mix my drums before I mix my bass. So that's, again, sort of personal taste, but I find that I get better mixes if I start with the drums and work from there. It also helps me catch any additional edits that need to happen. If there's a problem with the drum fill or a problem with the drummer like rushing or dragging or something like that. So I'm going to mute the bass guitar for now, and we'll listen to some of the drums. Let's go to the chorus where there's a busy drum part. So this drum recording is a live drum kit in this room that I'm sitting in. And Paul, the drummer from the band, played it. He usually uses an electric kit live, but we wanted to do a live drum kit on most of the recordings. This whole album, we recorded live drums for everything, but who's to say where we used what? In this case, I'm supporting the kick and snare with a trigger. This is what the triggers sound like. And this is what the drum kit sounds like without the triggers. I'll bring them back in now. Triggers are totally unnecessary if you want a natural sounding drum kit. In this case, I wanted it to be a little bit unnatural sounding, but not crazy. So I'm not blending these in too much. I just wanted that like inhuman level of consistency in the kick and snare, and also just getting a low end push in the kick that is pretty hard to get when you're sharing. The mic is in the room with everything else, so you end up with a bunch of extra rumble and stuff if you just do it with the kick mic. So I find that it helps to use a trigger for this kind of a drum sound. I am also using samples to support all of the toms, and I'm just placing these manually. I wanted a really, 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 really big sound on the tom fills, and you don't really get that sound in sort of like studio drum recording. You get it like in the concert halls. So I have some recordings of toms that were played, I think in probably in like a big hall or something like that, and these sound like this. So here's what the toms sounded like without that. And that's obviously closed mics. So let's add in the overheads. And the floor mic and the, where are you? The toms do have the parallel distortion in here. And the kick out tends to get, and the kit front tends to get some of the low end from toms. So this is more of the tom sound. So that's the tom sound without the support. And then without the processing, it sounds like this. With it again. Cool. And that's a combination of EQs, compressors, other stuff. So these toms just have EQs on them. Basically trying to remove resonances we had in the room. The room isn't perfectly treated, so we have some problems in here still. And the drums have more EQ than you should need if you recorded them at a nice studio. So let's listen to some of the drums without any of the processing. And I'll try to compensate for volume too. Well, it's about the same volume, just a lot less low end. So this is with no plugins, and then bring those back. Same thing without the triggers. So really not doing a ton, but like I said, there's some problems. You'll see there's a couple of really, really intense resonances up in around 3K in this room. So this is a thing that I have to compensate for when I mix. It's a thing I have to compensate for when I record. And it's also a problem in the cymbals we used. I would have used different cymbals if I could go back and do it again. And you can see kind of where those resonances were before pulling them out. Just very, very, very strange sounding things. And that's the most important thing with drums to me, is to find the places that are hilariously live and deaden them up. You're still going to have all kinds of room space and stuff like that, but usually some kind of thing is going to build up weird and it's going to sound like crap. Okay, let's take a look at the bass guitar by itself. So this song has a problem for me from the bass guitar that I usually solve differently, and that is that at the end of the song it's not slapped and then it is slapped in the other parts. I usually just cut it off and separate it onto different tracks. Usually need to process it differently. Because it's all distorted and stuff, I didn't need to do that on this song. But usually for rock bass, like this feels like a rock song to me. So for the rock bass, I use a Pultec clone or something similar. So here's what I've got. I'm just basically slamming into 3K. I'm starting from actually a preset on this one. This is the Waves Pultec clone. They have a rock bass preset, and I found it when I was learning how to mix, and I loved it. And over time kind of figured out how to do this on other EQs, and it's basically just slamming the hell out of 3K. It works great on bass guitars. Let's hear it without that. And with. It's really intense, but it works. And that on a normal EQ is going to look like totally crazy. It's gonna be like essentially like this. It's like, oh, it's wild how much 3K you can add to a rock bass in a really dense song. In a not dense setting or in a not rock setting, I almost never boost 3K. I usually am going to boost something more like 1.5K. You can also find places in the mid-range to cut. You can find places in the low end to boost. I like boosting around 80 to 100, something around here where it's usually the first partial for the low notes. So that's what I would do there. And then both of them together. Feels pretty good. There's a lot of synthesizers in this song, so I don't really need to get a ton of low end out of the bass, but I do want some. It's a bass guitar. I should have some low end. I also have, I don't remember doing this, but when you're working, you find a reason to do stuff, and then you do it, and then you come back and see, and you have no idea why. I have a compressor on the bass that is taking key input from the lead vocal. This is a thing that I usually only do with distorted electric guitars. In like heavy metal songs, like super intense productions, where I want the vocal and the bass and the guitar to be in like the same register. What I imagined happened here is that I wanted to get the bass to stand out in front of the super deep synthesizers, and I probably boosted something that I was also competing with the vocal. So in certain places when there's a big slap or a big chord or something on the bass guitar, it was probably getting in my way. And I want the vocal to come through in front of it no matter what. So that's what that sounds like. Next up, let's take a look at the vocals. So in this song, there is a lead vocal, and that's Madison. And she doesn't need a ton of processing, but there's always something to do, and there's always something to make it stand out or brighten up more. So with processing,
Feel this now, I stand before
and without,
you in a sea of sun the
well, I'm
size
sorry,
still a place.
the processing is up here in the.
Feel this now, I stand before you in a sea of sun the size all a place. This fantasy
So
of life.
something that I do that I think is a bit controversial is I like to come in with a limiter
Feel this now, I stand before
after
you.
I do my compressors, and I like to have just make sure that I'm getting every single peak out, because in a big heavy rock or heavy pop production, you want that loudest thing in the song to really be the kick and the snare, and you want to make the listener think that it's the vocal. So in this case, I do have the two compressors thing going on here, the 1176 style followed by the sorry, where is it? The tube compressor, the LA2A style, and then after that I am blasting 10K with a Pultec clone. I am doing a second layer of de-esser with this plugin, Smooth Operator.
Feel this now, I
You can see
stand
there's
before
not a whole lot going on here.
you in a
Almost nothing. I already have a de-esser. I just, after boosting with any analog modeled EQ, you don't know what you end up with, and you end up with sibilance. So in that case, that's what we've got going on here. I wanted another double on this song, and I thought we tracked it, but when we were editing, we found out that one of the tracks was just a copy paste. And a copy paste is the same thing as just adding volume. So I'm using this plugin to get a fake double.
Feel this now, I stand before you in a sea of sun the size all.
And apparently I have that automated somewhere. Where are you here?
Behind us in the distance, there's a door from
Yeah.
beat. I know.
So
Already being on me.
not a whole lot going on there, but it helped in the mix and it made it sound bigger. I've got a slapback and a stereo delay here. I love delay on vocals.
Already unmade.
Without it, you can hear the
So
ADT
take
plugin more.
me now to where I feel at home, to the backlit towers looming.
Again, with pop and rock, I like having a slapback before it hits any any reverbs or delays. I think that it helps a ton. And I have a quick slap here. It's not super blended in. It just makes the vocal sound bigger. I have a sort of some final EQs here. I had a resonance that came out after essentially blasting it the way I'm doing. And instead of going back and fixing it, I did the sort of lazy move and I just killed it here. And in a dynamic EQ, where I'm finding a ton of resonances.
Powered by your group desire already being unmade.
This is, again, a thing that you don't really have to do, but I didn't want the mastering engineer to deal with some stuff that I was already noticing was a problem. I tend to mix into really heavy limiting, so I can hear what the song would sound like if it's mastered super loud. And I also know that I'm mixing something that could be mastered super loud. And again, I am hitting it with a limiter at the end after all this stuff. And again, without...
Powered by your group desire already being ordained.
And with. It's
So
not
take
doing
me-
a lot, but it's essentially killing resonances and it's killing super big fluctuations in volume and letting me control exactly where it fits in the mix, which I find to be really important in pop songs. You don't really have to do it that way, but like it's, I think, helpful. So anyway, at the end of it here, we've got
Starting to fade, the memory remains.
a crazy delay on it. Instead of automating it, I used to automate these. I don't think it's helpful to me. Like I'm not limited in tracks. It's digital, so I can just do whatever I want. I just take that last syllable, and in this case, I've got this great free plugin, Valhalla Supermassive, and I've got that processing just the Reaper stock delay here.
Starting to fade, the memory remains.
And in context,
Starting to fade, the memory remains.
and I think it sounds really good. I like it a lot. So we've got a double, which is sometimes doing a harmony. Let's hear those together.
Feel this now. Feel this now. I stand before you in a sea of sunless eyes, all ablaze. This fantasy of light and wire power.
So because I don't have a ton of vocals here, if you've got a big stack, you can do whatever you want with it. In this case, I have some really, really careful rhythm editing to get all of the syllables to line up. Because when there's just two and they're harmonizing, I kind of want it to sound like just one. And in this case, we have a stack, but it's not like consistent in performance because half of the stack is a talk box down here. So that's
of light and wire powered by a group desire.
that's Reese down here on the talk box, which is the next thing we'll look.
Of light and wire powered by a group desire already being unmade.
And when you have different performers that aren't performing it in the room at the same time, you end up with sometimes different pronunciations of words. You end up with sometimes different lengths of words. And you end up just needing to do a lot of editing to get it to sound exactly the way you want. Otherwise, it sounds messy. And something I noticed with TalkBox is that the transients come out like really, really intensely. So when I'm working with TalkBox, not with vocoder, with TalkBox, that's a big distinction. You can actually see it in the waveform here.
When I see of sun,
And what I do with these is I just limit the fuck out of them.
when I see of sunless eyes all ablaze.
And this is like
When I see
right?
of sunless eyes all ablaze.
Without it,
When I see of sunless eyes all ablaze.
with it. You don't even notice it. It's there. It's just you can't get these loud enough without clipping it or without making it occasionally come out being way too loud compared to everything else, without doing a lot to it. I am also boosting the hell out of 8K on this. I like boosting 10K for vocals. If there's two vocals and one of them feels more important, the other one gets something like 8K. I just pick a different frequency for it and work around and see what feels good. In this case, I am also, let's see what I'm doing here. Yeah, I'm boosting 8K incredibly. And again, I just love these like vintage EQ clones. There's a really nice one from Isotope. Let me see here. Vintage EQ. So this is a nice one that's the same kind of a thing. There's a really nice one actually that's stock in Logic. I think it's called it might just be called like Pultec or something, or Vintage EQ. So a lot of DAWs have this. Reaper doesn't have one, but and I prefer working this way sometimes than I do with this, but depends on what I'm doing. In this case, I'm essentially doing the equivalent of like this. I'm just blasting that 8,000 range. Actually, more like this much. I'm going +9, I think it said there. So that's what I've got there. I'm hitting it with the compressor before I hit it with the limiter. The limiter is sort of my last step. I basically want to get it roughly where I want, and then I want to just basically squish out all the stuff that I don't want to get into the competition with the drums. So all these vocals together sound like this.
In a sea of sunless eyes all ablaze, this fantasy of light and wire, powered by a group desire already being unmade.
And I've got the important Reese in the middle and the important Madison in the middle, just competing with each other because they're in different EQ ranges. And I have the unimportant ones. So Madison's harmony is off to the right and Reese's harmony is off to the left. Just keeping stuff out of the way of each other. Let's hear that again in context real quick. Cool. That's the vocals. Next up down here, we've got this track called Stereo Lead. This is my guitar leads. And there's little edits and stuff. Like right here, there's probably just some crazy string noise. Yeah. I probably bumped a string or something. I played this one, if that's not obvious from the way I'm talking about it. I play guitar in this band. So this is sort of like a, I guess, promotional video in some ways. I basically put all of my cabs behind me and I have put mics on all of them in the front and the back of the cabs. Just to have options, and I ended up using almost all of them. This is the only mic I did not use. Kind of my lo-fi mic. As you can hear, there's really intense delay on it. I'm taking DIs and running them through amp sims, just doing all kinds of stuff to make these leads enormous. I just want them to take up all the space when they're there because every time they show up, they're kind of the featured thing. So that's the guitar leads. Next up, we've got, let's do the rest of the guitars real quick before we go to the synths. So we've got Reese's guitar. And Reese's guitar, I actually muted in almost the whole song because he's also playing a synthesizer. We basically had him track everything on all of it. And I was running out of space in the mix. I felt like it was just a jumbled mess. So I ended up deciding to mute his rhythm guitars during the times that he is playing a synth part that's really important. So if we listen to the rhythm guitar parts, that's just me here. And then it creates a nice dynamic when his part comes in here. His guitar's got a little bit more gain than mine. I've actually got a double here, but it sounds great, and I think it sounds especially great when you include his synth part that he's playing right before it, so you can hear the transition from the guitar part to the synth part, or the rather. So I've got the synth on the left, and then the guitar replaces it here. And it's a nice transition, and I could have done that a bunch of different ways, but I thought it'd be cool to do it with attention to the person that was playing it instead of to the instrument part themselves. So that's what we got there. I've got the same idea where I've got a bunch of microphones on each cab, but for the rhythm guitar parts, I double tracked it to make it sound a little bit bigger, and I did the same two cabs, the 212 and the 412. And then the other one. And by itself, this sounds nice and crunchy, but it's missing a lot of the depth. Bring that in and you get the depth back. And then you bring in Reese. And you can hear the guitar kind of shaking, and that's because it's got, the rhythm guitars are doing that thing I mentioned earlier where I am feeding the vocals to the key input of a compressor. And that's basically letting the guitars be a little bit too big and keep the vocals audible. So whenever the vocals are going, the guitar is a tiny bit quieter. Whenever the vocals are not going, the guitar is a tiny bit louder. So all together, that with the vocals sounds like, let's get the talk box in as well, because that's probably part of the key input.
Now I stand before you.
And the idea is in the
context,
you won't notice that the guitar is ducking behind the vocals. It's just basically making it constantly like all guns blazing loud. So that's what we got for the guitars. Just to give you an idea of how much louder the lead is than the rhythm guitars. It sounds crazy there, but you bring in the bass and the drums and stuff like that, and it stops being crazy pretty fast. I like mixing important melodies like their lead vocals. It bothers me when I hear a song like especially like a metal song or a rock song where like the singer is super loud and then there's like a guitar solo and it's like, who cares? That's just part of the background music. It's like, no, give me the cool bendies. Okay. Finally, last but not least at all, this is probably the meat and potatoes of the song. The demo for this, when I first received it, was called Heavy Synth, not Fearless. And it started with something like this. And we added a bunch of extra layers here, but basically that synth riff was kind of the starting point for the song, is my understanding. And to do that, we've got a bunch of layers here. We've got this is Reese's keytar. It's one of the default patches on whatever keytar he's got. We doubled it. We just played it twice. I've got both of those on the left, but a little bit of depth of field. One of them's hard pan, one of them's not. Then we've got this one. I think this one is my matrix brute. I'm not sure though. We got this one. I think this is the keytar again, or maybe it's, it might be actually the mini log. There's a little, I can hear a little edit that I made in there. In context, you're not going to notice those little things, but I want the rhythm to be pretty accurate. Then we got, this is another track of the Matrix Brute. And then under that, we've got synth bass, which I have separated because I want this to have more low end. I'm cutting low end out of probably the whole folder of the other synth, but. So this is sort of panned, like loose stereo left and right. My Mini Moog and the Matrix Brute. And because these are just holding out, I do have these sidechained. I think this type of thing is usually better done with a an arrangement where you like just play the note on the synth after the kicks. They're like do do, but in this case, it worked doing it this way. It's a little bit like doing the same thing but with a slow attack synth. Let's see what I'm doing here. I'm using that Pultec clone. I'm probably doing the Pultec thing. No, I'm just boosting around 100. And again, I've got a limiter on this as a folder. I'm just basically making sure that I catch any stray peaks. Those turn up a little bit more often when you're using audio. A lot of plugin synths won't have stray peaks, and that makes them great for some situations and sad in other ones. I like the unpredictability of the big clunky unreasonable ones. So let's listen to the synths in the chorus now. I think that's kind of one of the coolest parts of the song. I'll bring the synth bass back in now. And then with the vocals.
So take me down to where I feel at home, to the backlit towers looming in the haze. Before the rising of the sun, this world will be undone. It's starting to fade from every remains. Feel this now, I stand before you in a sea of sunless eyes on the wings.
You can hear the bass guitar in this part especially is not important to the low end of the song. It's like it's there for those like snaps and pops and stuff. It's part of the rhythm section. And I think that's kind of an important thing to think about when we're mixing. Is just like I know this instrument has bass in the name, but like, is it doing that role in the song? In this song where there's a synth bass, not really. It's kind of there to ornament the song, and it's actually a little bit more highlighted. And because it's more highlighted, it's actually going to have a lot less low end in this mix, which sounds counterintuitive, but you just run out of space in the low end pretty fast if you try to have everything be tons of bass. So in this one, I really liked the bass guitar having more of that snap sound, and I think we used Oliver's bass, his it's like a JP jazz P bass like combo one, I think. It sounds like a jazz bass. It might be Reese's jazz bass. I'm not sure which one we used on this one, but it's got that nice sort of snappy, bright timbre, and yeah, I probably got some low end filtered out of it or something in here somewhere. That's my guess. Well, maybe not. I'm just boosting my highs a lot. Oh, I've got a dynamic EQ killing some of the low end, and then I've probably got some low end killed on like some of these other EQs in here. Yeah, some of them have like the close cab mic has that pulled out. And then this guy, yeah, some of the DIs. This is my like bass boosted DI, and I'm pulling the subs out of that one a little bit. So it's I think I may have been asked to bring some of the low end back in here, and I probably did that and forgot. Either way, that's where like the really low end of the song is coming from, is the synthesizer. So that's what we got there. Let's take a look at the synthesizer some more. Each of these layers. Let's see what we got here. Those are the same two that we got going on the other parts. In this one, we've got this nice lead. This arpeggiator, which I think Reese just like played it. Not like played the notes, but I think he like set the tempo on his synth to the song. I don't think he clocked this. I think it's literally just timing it right. When I saw him doing that, I was just like, dude, you know, you can just plug in a MIDI cable and like it'll set the tempo to the session. And he's just like, I'm not weak to this. I don't remember what he said, but he just does it the hard way. I wanted a little bit more to the pads here, so I added this one after we recorded it. Reese, if you're watching it, you can hear this for the first time. So that one's I did with pigments. Not doing a whole lot, but it was doing a lot when I did it, so it is in the song. Let's see what we got here. This other synth jumps in on the verses and the yeah, cool. Okay, and then we've got that sound design is a synth, I guess, technically. And it's funny because you start bringing it in piece by piece and you can actually kind of hear what that other thing is doing. When you just know that it's there and then turn the whole song on, it seems like it gets lost. It's all auditory illusions. We're just listening to some vibrating pieces of paper, basically. Most speakers are like cardboard. Some of them are like Kevlar. Anyway, this is the song. I actually have the master best processing turned off here. I should show you that. So in the song, I've got automation here on an EQ. And that's basically brightening up the choruses. So we can watch the EQ change here. And it's not a huge change, but I tend to do that in almost all of my songs. I just like it when choruses or important parts get brighter. It tricks your ear into paying attention to it. And I did, you do that like, you can set automation. It looks like I just like played the automation here. So you set it to whatever mode, read or latch or whatever your preferred method of writing automation is. And you either write it in with faders or you write it in by hand. Sometimes I'll just record the automation and I'll just click and drag the knob with a mouse if I'm feeling lazy. There's no rules. You do it however you want. But other than that, I have, I get some latency when I record these videos if I run Ozone, but I was using Ozone on the mix. I had the vintage comp, Ozone vintage comp on here on mid side mode. And I am basically just going hard enough to touch the peaks a little bit. So I'll show you what that looks like. And so let me do that without that on. So I'm compressing the sides really hard, and then the mids are probably, my guess is hitting just to the, really compress the kick and snare. Let's see. So it looks like I was compressing this one really hard on the master. But mainly I'm just trying to get a couple decibels of gain reduction and make sure the kicks and snares are super, super even. For a song like this, I think that's just what sounds good. I don't do other bands this way, but and this one just felt awesome, hitting it super hard with that compressor. Let's see if there's anything else worth looking at here. We can look at some of the plugins I'm using. I'm using Valhalla Vintage Verb as my long verb, and I believe also as my short verb. These are the settings on the short verb. So 0.25 seconds decay, and this one's 4 seconds for the long. Sometimes I'll use a medium one as well. This one I didn't. The samples I'm using for the sound design, I'm using some cymbals that I have in the other room that I recorded. The gong in the other room. This sub push here slides down. That's I made that with Massive, or Massive X, actually. And it's just a simple patch. I started with a preset and worked my way out of it. Filtered it down to where it's just kind of only in the subs, only existing in the low end. These little synth pushes into the choruses. I actually supported with an extra filter, so I copied the part from the synth. And without my extra filter, so I'm kind of making it a little bit extreme here, and I'm doing that essentially with a bandpass filter on just the default Reaper EQ. And I'm just trying to match the vibe of the performance on the, that's like one of those touch pads, whatever I don't know what they're called on synths. The strips that you use as a mod. I think they're called mod strips, maybe. But that's what is creating that sound initially. And let's see. I guess seeing what I've got on kick in might be helpful to some people that want to know how to mix their kick drum and make it seem loud. Around 5K is loud and snappy in the kick, and around 50 hertz is the thud of the kick. There's really not a lot to it other than just turning it up. I do that with a limiter. You can have a really short transient, and that's going to sound like shrimpy, and you can have a really thick transient, and that's going to sound sort of distorted. Find the place in between that feels really good, and you have just like a wide, thick sounding drum. I exaggerate this a lot in rock, pop, metal, hip hop, anything that's not like trying to be subtle. I wouldn't do this in jazz. I wouldn't do this to like a blues band. I wouldn't do this to certain types of like prog bands, stuff like that. But like anything that's trying to be like, here's some music, turn it up. Like, I don't want, for example, this kick drum and this one to be so much quieter than this one. I want them to be smaller. It's going to sound a little bit quieter, but I want it to be roughly the same volume. Every single kick should be like the loudest thing. And you can see actually if I go into the, if I drop a limiter on the master bus here, I have this one on here for the video. I have it just set to minus 0.1. And you can see, like, I'm still catching some of those peaks from the drums because I have my instances of ozone compressor off because of the latency that it creates for the video. And I've got some other instances throughout the session on buses and stuff like that of that compressor because I really like working with it. But when you take it off, it actually, you can see that it is catching a couple of these peaks, and we're getting a little more than a decibel of peak reduction in some places actually on just a basic limiter here. And the idea is that I just really want every kick and snare to be super, super loud. And every single one should feel like it's louder than the last one in a song like this, where it's just really, really no subtlety at all. It's just, let's make this rock super hard. Like you want Beavis and Butthead to be back there just like, yeah, 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 rock, whatever, right? So that's what I got here. That's the song. I'll put a link to where you can listen to the whole thing in the description of the video. And definitely let me know if you got any questions or if you want to hear any other mixes that I've done. I'll probably do a few more of these for other songs on the album that I mixed. And I'll do some for other stuff if people want it. But you got to let me know in the comments which ones you want because it takes time to make these. Thanks for watching. I will see you next time, and check out the new Eclectotron album. I'm proud of my work on it, so I'll see you later.